Okay.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks
Okay.
again for this.
Here we go.
Thanks again for this. Thanks again for this opportunity to support you on this very important project. Earl Lloyd, as most of us know from Nova Legends and the great history that he created, was the first African American player to play in the NBA, and he's also from Alexandria. And on Saturday at 1 p.m., there's going to be a virtual event, largely virtual event with lots of dignitaries to unveil his statue at Charles Houston Rec Center in Alexandria, the old town Alexandria, where Parker Gray, his high school, was located, the black school, the segregated school in Alexandria. So we're very excited. On Monday, that statue will be available for the public to see, I hope, in perpetuity. So, so anyway, that's what we're here to celebrate and to give folks information, and to tell you about the event so people can support the event. So first of all, let me just quickly introduce everybody and kind of tell us who you are, your connection to the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame, and maybe your connection to basketball. Coach Lewis, could you go first, please?
Yes, Julian. Thank you again for the opportunity, you and Preston. My name is Jimmy Lewis. I'm a native of Alexandria, Virginia, and I attended Parker High School where I was a basketball player. And through the help of Earl Lloyd, I became a scholarship basketball player at West Virginia University. I subsequently coached for 50 years on all levels, high school, college, professional, and USA basketball.
Okay. Hey, Butch, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. I'm Julian Butch Haley Jr. I'm also a native of Alexandria, Virginia, and also chairman of the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame. Our goal basically is to preserve the African American history in Alexandria, and for us to be a part of this statue and this ceremony is very, very historic. One of the greatest things we've done thus far, and we're very proud to be a part of it.
Okay. Preston, will you go next, please?
Yeah, I'll go next. My name is Preston Green. I'm from Gum Springs, Virginia, which is nearby Alexandria. I played basketball at Fort Hunt High School, and now a professor at the University of Connecticut. But when I was playing, I was really, really interested in the history of basketball, certainly in Alexandria, and had heard of Earl Lloyd. And so when we developed this basketball group, Nova Legends, I saw this as an opportunity to learn more about the history. And so it's been a great opportunity to learn about Earl Lloyd's history, his connection to Alexandria, and the great career that he had.
And I'm Julian Brown. I'm from Fairfax. I played at Robinson High School. I am passionate about high school basketball. I played, coach, officiated, and with Preston and others, started Nova Legends as a way to celebrate the history of Northern Virginia basketball and its players, its coaches, and its officials. So anyway, quickly about Earl Lloyd. He was born in 1928 in Alexandria. He attended Parker Gray, as we said, which was the black school in Alexandria. He graduated in 1946. Obviously, was a basketball star. He attended West Virginia State University, which is a black college in West Virginia, which is then part of the historic CIAA. Obviously, he was a major superstar there, and he was drafted by the Washington Capitals of the NBA. And he had the distinction to be the first black player to play in a game. He was in the same class as Chuck Cooper for the Celtics and Nat Sweetwater Clifton for the Knicks. But because of the way the timing worked out, Earl was actually on the court before those guys were. His game was first. Unfortunately, the Capitals didn't last long. They folded before the season was over. He went into the service. When he came back, went right back to the NBA, had an impact, and he actually won a NBA championship with the Syracuse Nats in 1955. He is, as Coach Lewis will talk about, he was also a coach, and he is his basketball exploits are makes him a member of lots of different Hall of Fames, including Alexandria African American Hall of Fame, the West Virginia Hall of Fame, the CIAA Hall of Fame, Naismith Hall of Fame, the Michigan Hall of Fame, and the Virginia Athletic Hall of Fame. So he's just a tremendous athlete, had a profound effect on basketball, not just in Alexandria and Northern Virginia, but across the country, and opened up doors for many basketball players, including Coach Lewis. So Coach Lewis, you actually knew Earl Lloyd, and he actually supported you in your career. Why don't you give us a little more detail about Earl?
Absolutely. I had the good fortune of meeting Earl when I was 12 years old, and as was the case when he was in the midst of his 10-year NBA career, he would come back to Alexandria in the off season and substitute teach occasionally and run the playgrounds in the summer, and really just gave tremendous advice to all of us. And for the older guys, he'd give a real good whipping on the court because he was a bruiser. You know, he was one of the original enforcers, 6'6", about 225, and mobile, agile, and hostile, as they say. So, but I'm just so excited, guys, really, that we're less than 48 hours from having this statue of Earl Lloyd unveiled, and having the world to truly continue to recognize the barriers that he helped to break down, not only basketball, but society's barriers. And we all know about how challenging our country was in terms of racial relations back in the 40s and 50s when he was creating something special for the rest of us. But his humanity and his love for his fellow man on and off the court separated him. And those of us who had the good fortune of knowing him can really say, as I do, that he was a gentle giant, but he was an angel in my life as well. And next to my father, who I loved, he's the most significant male figure in my life.
Oh, that's great. Butch, did you want to add some detail to that as well, or?
Well, I had the opportunity to meet Earl on 2 occasions. One when he visited Alexandria, and then the other when he at one of the CIAA tournaments. And as people speak of him and how gentle he is, how opening he is and warm he is, I found that to be true as you approach him and just have a lovely conversation with him. So that was my experience in terms of meeting and associating with Earl.
Preston, do you want to add a few words to that as well?
Yes, so, yes, I would like to. I mean, I never met him, but as I said, I heard of him and read about him and read about his exploits. And I think one thing that I found through our Facebook site, and also just listening as well to the some of the speeches that he gave, was that he was, in spite of all of his accolades, he was still a child of Alexandria. That he still, that he always talked about what he learned about Alexandria, the coaches, the people who mentored him, that he was that he was from there and always would be from there. And so it was just it's just this sense of pride about someone who, who made good from there and who still remained a part of it. Even though he had been really successful and had national acclaim, he still was connected to Alexandria, and that was just so good to see.
Great. Well, we're really excited about the list of speakers that are going to present on Saturday at the virtual event. It's an amazing list of people, well deserved by his legacy. Coach Lewis, you want to talk about some of the folks that are going to be speaking on Saturday?
Absolutely. And again, I want to give tremendous credit to Butch, the chairman of the African American Hall of Fame, and Robert Dawkins, who is the founder and visionary behind the Hall of Fame, African American Hall of Fame, and several projects like this. And they've just let me come along for the ride. But we've been working hard on this for about a year, so it's close. And yes, we feel like the world, we've extended our arms and the invitations to so many of Earl's close contemporaries from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and in the world of basketball and outside of it. And we have about 17 speakers, all virtual, for the program. And we'll start off with the 3 political dignitaries that we have. Our mayor of Alexandria, Mayor Wilson, 2 senators, Senator Kane and Senator Warner, and then the Governor Northam of the state of Virginia. So, which again speaks volumes to the respect that the entire state and, in fact, the world holds Earl in such high regard. We also have two guys that were intimately involved with Earl during his coaching career as the assistant and then subsequently the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. One is Ray Scott, who Earl helped to draft and later became his sole assistant coach in 1968. And then in 1971, Earl became the head coach of the Detroit Pistons and coached the great Dave Bing of Washington, D.C. So we also have James Brown. You can't have a program without James Brown. And James was a great player himself, as we know, at DeMatha and Harvard. So James will speak along with a pretty good NFL coach named Tony Dungy, who was an excellent basketball player himself. We have a young man who is all of 94 years of age, and he is one of he is the sole remaining member of the undefeated 1948 West Virginia State team in which Earl was an All-American. Dr. Frank Ente, who also coached in the CIAA and the MEAC. Butch, I'll let you share some of the other speakers.
Yes, followed by Dr. Ente, actually, is a gentleman who created a documentary, Till Victory Is Won, that features that championship team that Earl played on, along with Dr. Ente, Mr. O.J. McGee. We also have the coach of Earl's alma mater, Mr. Brian Poore, who also is the individual who is significantly involved. If it wasn't for him, there probably wouldn't be a statue because he was very instrumental in getting the statue brought to West Virginia State College. We also have Earl's family. Well, you know, we need to have his family. His family will be involved. His sons, David, Kevin, Kenny, and Reggie, his nephew, will be involved as well. So that kind of rounds out where we are with that. Did you mention Sonny Hill, Jimmy?
I didn't, but you just
okay. We also have the great Sonny Hill right now he's one of the advisors for the Philadelphia 76ers, and the current owner and of the Mystics, Mr. Ted Leonsis, will be involved as well. So,
and Gladys Silver, who's the commissioner of the NBA.
Yeah. Wow.
With a cherry on top, Julian.
Yes, that's amazing. Hey, Butch, can you tell us a little bit about the statue itself? Kind of give us a little preview of what we can expect?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, Coach Poore, who's the current coach right now at West Virginia State University, one day he goes to the Final Four frequently. So, and he had stopped going because he started to have kids and he stopped going for a minute. But this one particular year, the Final Four was going to be held in New Orleans. And his wife had never been to New Orleans. So she said, hey, how about this year we go to New Orleans? I'd love to go. We can go to the Final Four and, and I can see some New Orleans. So, okay, they go to New Orleans. He goes to the center where a lot of the vendors are and things are being held. And he sees a big statue of Shaq dunking. So that caught his eye. So he runs over there, looks at the statue, and while he's standing there looking at it, this gentleman approached him and said, can I help you? And it was the actual sculptor, Mr. Brian Hanlon, who's also the sculptor for the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, the official sculptor. So he was looking at it, he said, hey, I would like one of these. We have a new gym that's going to be built, and we would love one of these to be in the middle of our, in the gymnasium there. So he said, well, who do you want one of? And he said, Earl Lloyd. And he was like, the Earl Lloyd? So that kind of put him at awe because he, so many people doesn't know Earl's history. So he said, yes, Earl Lloyd, who comes from my school where I coach, West Virginia State University, the first Black to play in an NBA game. He said, hey, it's a done deal. I will do it. So they spoke and stayed in touch. Long story short, the statue came about. And that's how the actual original statue came about. And it's at West Virginia State University now. But when Brian Hanlon made the statue, he made two, and he donated the other one to the family. The family in turn contacted us, the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame, to donate it to us to be put in Alexandria and erected in the Hall of Fame in Earl's hometown. So what appropriate place for that to be and displayed.
And Butch and Coach, Charles Houston Rec Center, it's the site of where Parker Gray High School was. For folks who are not from Alexandria, can you tell us a little bit about that neighborhood, and so they'll know when they're in town, how to find it?
Okay. Yes. Charles Houston Recreation Center is in the Parker Gray district, it's called, in Alexandria, or the north side, if you will. It's located on the site of the former site of the Parker Gray, where Parker Gray High School sit. That's the historic significance of the actual site itself. The address is 901 Wythe Street in Alexandria.
Right.
Now, Jimmy can elaborate on the Parker Gray portion of it.
Yeah, Coach. Yeah, as a person who attended Parker Gray, can you give folks a little bit of a background of Parker Gray High School and what it was like to attend it, go to school there?
It was the greatest high school in the world. We just actually celebrated our 100th anniversary. It began in 1920 and on the site that we just spoke of, and moved in 1951 to a new building on Madison Street, just 3 or 4 blocks away. But when Earl and my 4 sisters and my mother, all attended in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and I started there in 1959. It just was a bastion of Black excellence. In fact, the African American Hall of Fame depicts many of the graduates of Parker Gray who moved on and established themselves in noteworthy disciplines, like Earl did, generals, doctors, lawyers, judges. And so we were a small school enrollment, but we accomplished, and I'm saying this humbly, but the record speaks for itself. We accomplished so much because of 3 factors: the community, of which Earl spoke. He said that when he went off, he couldn't disappoint people from Alexandria. He had that much of a sense of responsibility to the community. Secondly, the teachers, who told us that they were going to get the very best out of us so that we could become the best versions of ourselves. And then certainly the administrators as well. So Earl and I played for tremendous coaches, one of whom, Lewis Johnson, directed him straight to West Virginia State, where he had graduated from earlier. And Earl actually, this is, I think, a cool thing, Coach Mark Caldwell, his coach at West Virginia State, Earl actually played in the same basketball system, basically, for 8 consecutive years. And he always called Coach Johnson, Lewis Johnson at Parker Gray, just a magic man who did so much with so little. Now, we didn't have the facilities and the uniforms and all the trappings of some of the teams that we played from throughout the DMV, but we were highly successful. After Earl left, I'll just mention this quickly. We had a string of 3 straight consecutive Virginia State boys basketball championship teams, 55, 56, and 57. And we ranked number 1 in the area in 1957. So that just speaks to, the legacy of Earl and others who came before us.
Coach, you once told me that when Earl went to West Virginia, he didn't even know any white folks, and so he wouldn't have even played pickup with the white players from George Washington High School. What are the kind of teams that Earl played against? Who would he play, Earl Lloyd play against when he was at Parker Gray?
Great question, and because of the geographic relationship to Washington, we played the majority of the teams in DC: the Dunbars, the Spingans, the Cardozas, the Eastern, the Westerns, Fairmont Heights from across the street in Maryland. And then we traveled far and wide in the state of Virginia to play Maggie Walker and Armstrong in Richmond, and Walker Grant in Fredericksburg, and Huffman, Boston. That was a nice short trip to Arlington, where Preston's father attended, and Luther Jackson, when it became a high school, the first black high school in Fairfax County. So, you found where the competition was. And if you were good like Earl, the competition found you. And so, yes, that is a true statement, that Earl never interacted with any person of color until he went into his first practice with the Washington Capitals in 1950. But the beauty of that is that they loved each other. They were teammates. They were bonded by one entity, a basketball, and he performed admirably, to say the least.
Well, that's great, and I think that we're going to provide links and as much information about the event, but also about the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame, so folks can go on the website and they can check out information about Earl Lloyd, but other heroes of our past, and so we can keep this history alive. So it's really exciting to be a part of this. I think Saturday's event is going to be incredible. I mean, you got Butch and your team. You've got extraordinary speakers, and we have a great subject. I mean, the guy Earl Lloyd had a great story, and we're lucky that he's part of our joint history. So, did you guys have any final comments about the event or about the statue itself?
Well, it's going to be a very, very historic day. And on behalf of the City of Alexandria, the Alexandria African American Hall of Fame, and our founder, Robert Dawkins, we'd like to thank you, Julian and Preston, for providing this platform to get the information out for folks can watch it and tune in. As I stated, it's going to be a very, very historic day. We appreciate this exposure from you guys. So thank you very much.
Oh, great. Well, we're lucky to be a part of this. So,
and even though it's COVID, thousands and thousands of people will say that they were there.
Yeah. Well, that's the beautiful thing about things being online. It's available forever, so people can enjoy this history from their computers or their smartphones to the end of time. So we're gonna enjoy Earl and his legacy. So.
Indeed, and and I will just say, I hope everyone comes on Saturday and attend this event. It'll be great. All the people who are coming to speak show just how important Earl Lloyd was to Alexandria and to the game of basketball, and and so please come, and it'll be a great event.
Yeah, absolutely. So
last thing, we actually saw the statue for the first time today, Julian, with the plaques that were put on. And so when the general public starts rolling in on Monday, the 5th of April, their mouths will open. It is a gorgeous piece of art. It really is, and depicts him so well.
That's great. Well, thanks for all you guys' work on this. It sounds like it's all come together. I guess it better happen quickly, because we're under 48 hours now. Yeah.
It's ticking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Okay, guys. We'll definitely see you on Saturday.
All right. Thanks.
All right,
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.